Ever wish you could just escape the winter blues? Like pack your bags and head somewhere warm?
Yeah, who hasn't?
Well, some people in India are proposing just that, but on like a massive scale.
Oh,
They're talking about a second capital city just for the winter.
wow. Okay, that's a new one. I'm intrigued.
And get this, their top contender is Nagpur.
Nagpur, that's interesting. What's the reasoning behind that?
Well, there's a bunch of reasons, but first, you got to know this Nagpur is almost the exact geographic center of India.
Like dead center.
Dead center.
That has to be a factor, right?
Right. Accessibility is key for a capital city, and especially for a country as huge as India. Nagpur's location makes it super easy to get to from every corner of the country, by road, by rail, you name it.
So no more slogging through Delhi's winter fog just to get to the capital.
Exactly. But speaking of Delhi winters, you know how brutal they can be?
Oh, tell me about it. Delhi winters are no joke.
So how do they compare to Nagpur's?
It's a total contrast. While Delhi's freezing, Nagpur has this really mild and pleasant winter climate. Temps average between 10 and 25 degrees Celsius. Our source even suggests that this kind of weather could actually boost government productivity.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's hard to focus when you're bundled up in a million layers, just trying to stay warm.
Exactly. But it's not just about the weather. There's a lot more to this proposal.
Like what?
Well, think about the potential impact on regional development.
Our source really emphasizes that, doesn't it?
It does. Making Nagpur a winter capital could be a huge boost for the region's economy.
How so?
Well, think about it. You've got increased government activity, which would attract investment, create jobs, and boost industries like hospitality and transportation.
So it's not just about shifting the capital, but also about spreading the wealth.
Precisely, and it could lead to more balanced development across India and help reduce those economic disparities.
Okay, that makes sense. But wouldn't this be a logistical nightmare? I mean, moving the entire government, even temporarily.
It's definitely a complex undertaking, no doubt, but it's not completely unprecedented.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, several countries have successfully implemented systems with multiple capitals. Take South Africa, for example.
They have multiple capitals.
Yep, 3 in fact, each one responsible for different government functions.
3. Wow. That's a lot to manage. But if they can pull it off, maybe India can handle too.
It's certainly a possibility, but it's crucial to consider the implications from all angles.
Like, what about security? Wouldn't 2 capitals make India more vulnerable?
Actually, the source argues that Nagpur's central location might actually be a security advantage. It's further inland, you see, away from international borders, potentially less susceptible to external threats.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought about the security aspect in terms of geography.
It's definitely something to consider. You know, this whole discussion is raising a lot of interesting questions about how location impacts a capital city's functionality.
Absolutely. So we've got the location, the climate, the potential economic benefits. But what about the city itself? Does Nagpur even have the infrastructure to handle a capital city, even temporarily?
It does. Nagpur has a major international airport, a busy railway station, tons of accommodation options, modern conference facilities, and even a well-equipped healthcare system.
So it's not just some small town being thrown into the spotlight.
Nope, not at all. Nagpur seems to have a lot going for it in terms of infrastructure. But I'm curious about the historical context. Does India have any precedent for shifting capitals or having multiple centers of power?
That's a great question. Let's delve into that next. It seems like every winter, Delhi's in the news for its air quality, or lack thereof.
It's definitely a major concern.
I mean, that thick smog, it can't be good for anyone.
No, especially not for government officials trying to, run a country.
Exactly. It makes you wonder how much that impacts their decision-making.
It's a valid point, and actually, our source mentions that this pollution does impact the government's ability to function effectively.
So how does this play into the argument for Nagpur?
Well, for starters, Delhi's geography kind of traps pollutants, and in the winter, that cold air just keeps it all close to the ground.
I see.
Then you add in things like vehicle emissions, industrial activity, and those agricultural fires in the neighboring states.
It's like a perfect storm of bad geography and human activity.
Exactly, and it creates a serious health hazard.
So where does Nagpur fit into all of this?
Nagpur's location is key. It's further from those agricultural fires and has lower levels of industrial activity and traffic.
So the air quality is significantly better.
Much better, especially compared to Delhi in the winter.
So by relocating the government to Nagpur for a few months, You're essentially giving those officials a break from breathing in all that pollution.
Precisely. It's not a permanent solution to Delhi's pollution problem, but it could be a step towards protecting the health of those governing the country.
Makes you wonder how much those bad air days in Delhi actually affect the decisions being made. But shifting the entire government, even temporarily, must come with its own set of challenges.
Oh, absolutely. Logistically, it would be a huge undertaking. The cost of moving personnel and equipment, setting up temporary offices, making sure everything runs smoothly, that's substantial.
Yeah, that sounds like a logistical migraine waiting to happen.
It would definitely require meticulous planning and coordination across various government departments and agencies. Plus, there's the economic impact on Delhi to think about.
All right. What about all the businesses and people in Delhi who rely on the government being there?
Exactly. Delhi's economy is heavily reliant on the government's presence. Shifting the capital, even temporarily, could have a ripple effect.
It seems like there are always trade-offs to consider, and we haven't even touched upon the potential political pushback.
Absolutely. Such a significant change would likely be met with resistance from those who oppose the idea or who see it as disruptive.
So we're talking about a decision with major logistical, economic, and political implications. Where do we even begin to weigh those potential benefits against all these challenges?
Well, I think we need to remember that this isn't just about escaping Delhi's winter woes.
It's about more than that.
Yeah, it's about a new way of thinking about how and where India's government functions.
So taking a step back and looking at the bigger picture.
Exactly. It's about asking ourselves, are the historical reasons for Delhi being the capital still relevant today? And could a new approach, one that considers things like climate, geography, even public health, be more beneficial in the long run?
It's a fascinating debate, that's for sure.
It is.
But before we get too carried away with all the what-ifs, let's bring in some historical perspective. You mentioned earlier that other countries have multiple capitals.
Right.
So what can we learn from their experiences?
Yeah.
So we've talked about all the pros and cons, the logistics, even the air quality.
We've covered a lot of ground.
Okay.
But could this whole two-capital idea actually work for India? I'm still not sure. It's a big question. And like we've seen with other countries, there's no one-size-fits-all answer.
So it's not as easy as packing up and moving the government for a few months.
Not quite. The success of a multi-capital system really depends on a lot of factors. You've got history, politics, geography, even the willingness of the people to embrace change.
So it'd be a pretty complex undertaking.
It would. Careful planning would be essential, a deep understanding of India's unique circumstances, and of course, a lot of open discussion and debate.
Speaking of debate, let's recap those main arguments for and against Nagpur as a winter capital.
Sounds good.
Okay, on the plus side, we've got that central location, the much milder climate, the potential for economic growth in the region, and of course, escaping Delhi's polluted air.
Right, and let's not forget Nagpur's existing infrastructure, the airport, the railway station, accommodation options, even the healthcare facilities are well equipped. It wouldn't be starting from scratch.
But then there's those logistical hurdles, the cost, the coordination, the potential for disruption,
Yeah, those are definitely major factors.
and we can't forget about the economic impact on Delhi. What about all those businesses and people whose livelihoods depend on the government being there?
You're right, that's a crucial consideration. And of course, there are the political aspects. Getting everyone on board with such a massive change would be a challenge.
It's a huge challenge, I'd imagine. So it's like a balancing act, weighing all the potential benefits against the challenges and everything we just don't know yet.
Exactly. And I think those international examples offer some valuable insights.
Yeah, South Africa, Bolivia, Malaysia, they've all made it work.
In their own ways, yeah. But the key takeaway for India isn't to copy what others have done.
It's about learning from them.
Exactly. Understanding the principles behind their successes and then adapting them to fit India's specific needs.
Could you give an example?
Sure. South Africa's system is designed to balance power and representation across different regions. While in Malaysia, they separate administrative functions from the symbolic and cultural heart of the capital.
So, taking inspiration, but forging a path that works for India.
Exactly. It's about having those tough conversations, looking at all the angles, and then making a decision that's in the best interests of the country and its people. And that means thinking about the long-term implications, not just the immediate challenges.
This whole conversation has been eye-opening. It makes you realize that choosing a capital city isn't as simple as it seems.
It really isn't. It's about history, geography, politics, economics, even public health. It makes you think critically about how governments function and if there's room for change.
So what's the final verdict? Could Nagpur really be a winter capital for India?
Honestly, it's too early to say. But that's what's great about these deep dives. It's not about finding all the answers. It's about exploring possibilities, asking those tough questions, and maybe even sparking conversations that could lead to real change.
I like that.
It's about giving people the information to engage in those discussions.
Well said. So as we wrap up, we encourage all our listeners to keep exploring this topic. Do your own research, consider the arguments, form your own opinions. The future of India's capital, or capitals, is a discussion worth having.
Couldn't agree more. And who knows, maybe one day we'll be recording the deep dive from Nagpur, experiencing India's winter capital firsthand.
Yeah, that would be amazing. But until then, keep those minds curious and stay tuned for more deep dives into the world around us.